Got involved with a dress designer called Ozzie Clark, who in the 60s we worked with and was our hero and what have you, and he went through the drug period like so many of the musicians. And I tried to help him get back on his feet. And one day in came Pattie Boyd, who was George's wife. I mean, we all fell in love with Pattie Boyd. She was just incredible. Ozzie fortunately was gay, and Pattie knew that. And Ozzie did this incredible routine. He just ran his hands right over her body, right the way down, said, "Do you like this fabric?" And he just sat down, cut the cloth, stitched it all up, put it back on, and made this absolutely perfect cut on the bias dress for her. It made her look even better, and I've got to tell you, she looked fantastic. We all love Pattie Boyd. She was in and out of our lives very early on. And when she married George, it was the quote, the fairy tale glamour wedding. It was a glam wedding compared with Paul, compared with John's weddings. It was the glam London wedding of that year.
Pattie, do you think you can ever live the life of a normal housewife now?
Yes, of course. Don't see why not.
Are you going to stay out of the limelight?
Yes.
Out of your own choice?
Yes.
And what about the family? How many children do you want to have?
About 3.
39. Give or take. Can I have the story of your romance? Pattie, how did it all start?
Well, we met on the set of A Hard Day's Night when George and the others were filming it, and I was chosen to play the part of a schoolgirl by Dick Lester and Walter Shenton.
Good old Dick Lester and Walter Shenton.
Yes.
Well, I've not been for Anne. And take it up from there. What happened then?
Well, actually, I asked Pattie out when we were making the film, and she said no, which was very embarrassing at the time, but it all worked out right in the end. And, yeah, in fact, I asked Pattie to marry me while we were making Hard Day's Night. And so,
I thought he was joking. I thought, oh, poor boy, he doesn't really mean it. I'll pretend he hasn't said it.
And it's taken you this long to convince her?
No, not really. I just sort of wanted to stake my claim on her.
Look into my eyes like a window. Wherever it takes me, I will know. In spite of all the days.
We all love Pattie Boyd. She was fantastic. It is no wonder that Eric Clapton wrote that incredible song for her. When Eric wrote that lovely song, Wonderful Tonight, dedicated to her, you just knew that there was going to be no animosity between George and Eric. And I think it was at a period when George and Pattie had drifted apart. So whilst everybody wants to make up stories about George was angry, he wasn't angry. He understood because he was already on the path. He knew that he'd moved on spiritually from that relationship. And in a way, it was beautiful. And that's all you can say about it.
This is one of the sort of famous institute photographs. They used to take the upper school and lower school because there's over 1,000 guys in the place. They have to split it into 2 photographs anyway. But there's a number of people on here that sort of might well sort of be of interest. As well as it being a lot of academically very successful people left this place, there's been quite a number went on for fame. That one there is George Harrison. Then you've got along here Peter Sissons. One unravels this huge photograph. You come along here to Paul McCartney. And then Paul McCartney's brother, who was Mike McGear. And I think they're all the people who've been on TV or in groups. There are a whole variety of other people who've made it and very successfully in a whole variety of other ways off that photograph.
Well, George was a very spiritual person, and I think he was brought up in the first instance as a Catholic. I'm not sure about that. I think he was. But certainly he took to Indian religion and assimilated it and became a great devotee and a great believer. He really firmly believed that the soul was the most important thing of all. And he often said, you know, what are we here for? We've got to find out. We've got to find ourselves.
Far from the noise and pace of city life, in the cool, clear air of Rishikesh, North India, Pathy News reports from the meditation retreat of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the man who, through transcendental meditation, is currently bringing peace of mind to the Beatles. Flower-loving Yogi told reporters that his brand of peace of mind could only be truly appreciated by intelligent men of the world with rewarding activities and high incomes. Among his most valued disciples were the Beatles, top of the pop pupils. He did his best to keep them away from outsiders, but George had a way for us. Keeping company with himself, it could be part of the treatment, John stalked along the shady paths. Ringo enjoyed the peace of togetherness with Mrs. Ringo. It was a very peaceful scene. So different from those not so far off times when just a glimpse of the Beatles was enough to ruin the meditation chances of anyone within earshot.
You know that I love you. You say you love me too. You give me all those things that make me glad when I am blue. If you listen to my heart, you will hear both you and sing. There's so much love that's waiting there behind the beat. The way you look so fine when you're with me all the time, it makes me happy, girl, to know that you are mine. And when I feel so good inside, from my head down to my feet, it's only love that's waiting there behind the beat.
Ah, those were the days. Now, 2 by 2, the world-famous quartet strolled quietly in the lovely meditation preserve. Paul and Ringo shed the cares of their successful world. Close behind, George and John, complete with blanket for even more peace. That great screen star Greta Garbo used to crave solitude. In these days, it's even harder to come by. But the Beatles have found it.
If I was given the opportunity to pick out 4 or 5 words to describe George Harrison, the first one that would come to mind would be spiritual. Commitment would be another one. I suppose in a way, if there was a one word to say, a developing guitarist would be another one. And in his own public persona, he was probably quite shy. George Harrison very early on took up a spiritual path. Unfortunately for George, he was laughed at and derided by certain sections of the public because they couldn't quite accept that George could be involved with Hare Krishna, the movement, these kids walking up and down high streets, banging a tambourine, singing Krishna, Hare Krishna. But what George discovered, which most of us discover in the end, that there's only one God. And that all these so-called avatars or holy men may or may not have existed. And what these other religions, which are called esoteric religions, teach you is that it's more likely than not they didn't exist. So the idea of Moses and Muhammad and Jesus were all based on folk stories to provide the public or the proletariat with a fear-like given situation. So they were kept under control by this thing of fear, that if you don't do good, you'll be in trouble. George found there was an alternative answer to that, and that most of this really wasn't true and it didn't sit well with him spiritually. Therefore, when something like The Life of Brian came on, which people had said was blasphemy and it was against Jesus, it wasn't a problem to him because it wasn't something he really believed in, because he'd found a different path that he felt very, very comfortable with. And it's something I can really understand what he found.